What is going on, my fellow geeks?
3 movies with elves and a guy with a white beard.
Not a lot of people accept it as canon.
2022 will be the year of Star Wars.
Well, I have more than just one piece of geek news.
I have been Isaac Hunter.
Which is like high culture, but better.
Hello, fellow geeks, and welcome back to Raving Geeks, the weekly pop culture podcast where we talk about all things geeky and geek culture, which is like high culture, but better. My name is Hope Gooderl, host of the Raving Geeks podcast, along with my co-host who will introduce himself in a minute with our question of the week. If you're just joining us for the first time and you like this episode, want to check out other episodes that we've got, you can find our other episodes at cm-life.com and any other place you listen to podcasts like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Just search Central Michigan Life Podcasts Raving Geeks. So our question of the week is kind of related to our topic a bit. With, do you prefer live action or animated movies, especially for which specific film?
That's actually pretty hard. I love both live action and animation. I think animation's a very underrated form of media, but I have to go with live action because even though I was raised on a lot of animated movies, I just love the style of some live action movies like Star Wars, and it's really funny. All the stuff that works in live action that I like can also work in animation, but I definitely do prefer some live action stuff.
Which movie specifically has to be live action for you?
Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. If they did it animated, it wouldn't have the same grasp and scope that it did in live action because it was such a great culmination of 10 years of buildup of all these movies interconnecting with each other into one big finale. And if they just had it, like, let's say some of the actors couldn't do the project because of scheduling conflicts and they decided to do it animated, it wouldn't have the same impact as it did.
Okay. My answer is I think animation has its time and place. So like kids movies, if you're watching on YouTube, I am in Zootopia right now. Outside of Flora and I think Fauna is what it's called. The flower shop, and there are some arguing sheep behind me as well. But like I think Zootopia would not have been good if they had tried to try to live animate them, try to make them more realistic rather than knowing that it's fully animated. But like the movie like The Losers with Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Idris Elba, Chris Evans. Why I couldn't remember Chris Evans' name, I don't know. But like that one, it was a graphic novel / comic first, but I think that like if they'd kept it animated, it wouldn't have done it justice.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you.
All right. So as always on Raving Geeks, we like to start off our podcast with our geek news. So Carter, what have you got for us this week?
I've got a lot of news this week, Hope. So I'm just going to go rapid fire on all this. The biggest news probably that at the time of this recording, Wakanda Forever from Marvel just released today. So I got my tickets for tomorrow. Very excited to go see that. But in other news, Sean Levy is in talks to direct a Star Wars film after he's finished with Deadpool 3. Daniel Kaluuya, the Academy Award winner, will be voicing Spider-Punk and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2. Star Wars The Acolyte, a new Disney Plus TV show for Star Wars, just started filming and dropped their cast list. Owen Wilson's character from Loki, Mobius, is rumored to also be appearing in Deadpool 3. And Disney's also looking for writers for an Indiana Jones series on Disney Plus. And and Keanu Reeves' new trailer for John Wick 4 also dropped today of this recording. And it's a great trailer. I'm very, very excited to see what comes out of that movie.
Nice.
But that's it for me.
Okay. I just want to elaborate on a couple So for the Indiana Jones series, it is going to be a Disney Plus, but it's unclear if it's going to be a prequel or a spin-off of Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones. And then as far as like cast list for Star Wars, The Acolyte, you've got Amanda Steinberg. So if you saw The Hate You Give, or The Darkest Minds, and a few other ones, she's been in a lot. Hunger Games was like her big thing. She was Rue. And then I think you said this, but Jessica Jones's Carrie Ann Moss has also been cast in the show.
Yeah, she's
Um,
also a Trinity from the Matrix, which is pretty crazy. So I'm glad she's getting a role in Star Wars.
I'm gonna do sad news really quick, and then I'm gonna go back to better news. Leslie Phillips, the voice of our notorious Sorting Hat for the Harry Potter franchise, has passed away at the age of 98 years old. He was apparently battling a long illness, according to the BBC, and he is survived by his wife, who told the tabloid The Sun that he was a national treasure. So yeah, he's been in a few other things, but if we wanted any Sorting Hat things and wanted it to be the same voice, we unfortunately cannot have that anymore, unless we use like archived stuff.
Yeah.
But so Jason Fuchs and Brad Caleb Kane have been announced as the co-showrunners for the prequel series currently in production at HBO Max for It.
Oh yeah, I saw that. And they're trying to get Andy Muschietti to do the pilot episode, right?
Yeah, I think so. And then for speaking of prequels, the prequel to the Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, has officially wrapped filming after approximately 4 months of filming, which seems super fast. But yeah, I'm excited for it. The official wrap date was November 5th. Agatha, Coven of Chaos is rumored to be one of Marvel's longest shows. They are aiming for 9 episodes.
Okay.
So that one is also interesting. To think that she was just a side character and she's now, well, I mean, a lot of the shows are side characters, but she wasn't important until like the last 2 episodes of WandaVision.
Yeah.
And she might be getting the longest running Marvel show. Warner Brothers seems to be doing something smart for the first time in a while. And they said that they are going to be focusing on franchises like Harry Potter and Superman.
Yeah.
So I am hoping that that means that they are going back to Fantastic Beasts and trying to work through some kinks and fix some problems. And then my last bit of news has to do with the a cappella group Pentatonics. They released a holiday album as well as a Disney Plus special, which their new album features guest vocals from Leah Salonga, Megan Trainor, Lang Lang, Grace Loca, Hiba Tawaji, La Santa Cecilia, and a lot of well, not a lot, but a few other people as well. Their Disney special is that they are taken on a whirlwind tour around the world, discovering holiday traditions and inspiration from Pentatonics fans all around the globe, from Japan to Grenada, Iceland to Ghana and Mexico. And it will be released on December 2nd.
Oh, super cool.
And yeah. And as part of this interview, they were asked about what musical they would turn into an a cappella musical. So Mitch said that he would do Spring Awakening as an a cappella. Scott said Dear Evan Hansen, which I think that one's interesting because of how much like chords and just like harmonies that one has on its own. To hear it as a cappella would be really cool. Kevin said Wicked, to which Scott replied, Wicked would be hard, but it would be cool. And then Kirsten said Into the Woods would be hard, but really cool. Mitch also added Sweeney Todd would be a good a cappella show. And Matt agreed with Sweeney Todd as an a cappella show.
Nice.
So I thought that was interesting to note, because musicals are part of a lot of the things that we do in the geek realm. So that is it for our geek news this week. As always, is going to be a ton more geek news that comes out after we record this episode. As we're recording, we're going to miss stuff, but that's what we wanted to keep you updated on today. So our geek topic for today's episode, you might have tried to guess it a little bit with our question of the week, asking about live action or animated. But we wanted to look at if there was like why we make something animated versus live action, especially with our recent trend that we're seeing, especially from Disney, of them taking their old animated videos and turning them into live action movies. So Carter, why do you think a producer or creators might decide to go with animated instead of a live action film?
That question has many answers to it, in my opinion. I do think it's because animation is a less respected form of media in the world of Hollywood, which I think is a damn shame. I think animation is a beautiful way to express media. And I think that people are getting the misconception that live action means like more adult and will appeal to more audiences, kids and adults alike, because live action tends to have some of that gritty real life realism that adults seem to associate to. And well, I can disagree with that more than enough, because an amazing animated movie called Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse incorporates all the dark grittiness of the real world and applies it to a really colorful and beautiful film. I think with the contrasts of just some of the serious moments that take place, without spoiling the film in case anybody's never seen it, some really dark things happen in that movie, and they're allowed to change the color palette to fit the realism to the adult perspective, I think. And it really is a damn shame to see animation kind of just get trashed on. But I think there is a resurgence of animation happening, especially after what HBO Max and Netflix have done to animation recently. I hope that people are now looking at animation through a different view to see it's not only that an artist's interpretation of something is being lost, but it's also jobs. If you really want to incorporate the realism, as somebody would say, you're losing jobs, you're losing money, and all of these fronts. And I hope that people start to look at animation differently and go back to like some of the older Disney films and some of the old DreamWorks films, and hopefully they respect them more. I like to revisit Ice Age once in a while, and that's one of my favorite animated films. And I think due to the amount of sequels that it's gotten, it's kind of lost its respect amongst the animation community. But I really do hope that people look at animation differently going into the future.
Yeah. You talk about you just said it, my brain. Ice Age. I don't know that it's the animation that people lost respect for as much as the storytelling, because towards the end it was just like, okay, what else can we do now that's a little bit different, but still the same characters. But I think animation, at least the way that I see it, is a lot more of like creating characters versus just the actors.
Right.
So the one that I think of is Lightyear, and how Chris Evans is the voice of Buzz Lightyear. And I think if it had been a live action instead of animated, people would just be seeing Chris Evans or Captain America instead of this new character that, is a toy. Or the for those of you watching, my cat Loki has decided to join. Um but instead of just seeing it's Chris Evans, or like in Encanto, instead of seeing Lin-Manuel Miranda or Stephanie Beatrice, they're seeing these actual characters. Like I remember with Tangled, going, oh yeah, that's Zachary Levi who's voicing Flynn Rider. And my mom was like, I don't hear it whatsoever, even though she had watched all the episodes of Chuck. So she
Yeah.
would think that she would know his voice pretty well, but because you can take away the actor, it's easier to be able to create the characters.
I think that's what the beauty of animation and voice acting does, because it's easy, like what you said, for live action, it's easy to recognize people by their faces, but when you get down to like their voices, it gets harder to recognize people because there's not a certain image to go along with the voice when you put their voices in live action. Only until like recently I've been like discovering like Ray Romano is Manny from Ice Age, and I discovered that a few years ago. I'm like, wow, that's so cool that I've seen a couple of episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond, and he was on this old TV show called Parenthood. And it was like, it's really cool to like discover those kinds of things, that some of your favorite actors are doing some of your favorite animated movies. And I think that's what's great. I think what holds back some live action movies is that the stardom power can hold some of the movie's expectations a little high for some people, because going into a movie like with Chris Pratt, for me, I expect the very best in tip-top shape, like with story, with CGI, with character designs, and with the character and how they're written. And sometimes I just don't get that. But with animated films, I think there's more of an opinion to take for animated films. There's not like who is voicing this person, how I should be judging the person and how they're doing their job. It's more, how am I judging the animation? How am I judging how the story flows? And I think that's what animation has an advantage to over live action. I think in animation, I think it's easier to tell a story without having to worry about acting and CGI, more just about how the animation tells the story. Like WALL-E. Oh, what a great movie WALL-E is. Literally half of that film is just the animation telling a story. And I talk to people about WALL-E, and they're like, yeah, I never really liked that film as a kid, and even now. And I'm like, always like, why? And they're like, there's no dialogue in that movie. And that always stuns and disappoints me, because I'm like, that's not the whole point of that movie, though. The whole point was to prove a point that animation doesn't need dialogue to tell a story, which is why it was submitted to the Criterion Collection. It's a huge step in animation for that time period, and I love it. It's such an emotional story. And yes, the second half of the film, there's dialogue when they get to the people on the ship and the robots are talking, but I think that first half of that movie is excellent. And the second half is still great too, don't get me wrong. I think that movie is overall so tightly written and fantastic. And it's an environmental movie done right, how we need to take care of our planet and respect our surroundings, and the consequences of what happens when we don't are really felt throughout that movie. And it's an overall great message. I really love that film.
If so, I'm trying to look up what movie it was, but he's done so many. Do you think WALL-E would have been different if they had done a similar animation as the newest Lion King, where it was like the it looks real, but it's still technically animated? So like Hugh Jackman's gosh, hold on. I am when Wikipedia does not help. It was a robot one that Hugh Jackman had done.
I think you're thinking of Chappie, right? Or, well, he did too. There's
Um,
Real Steel, which was about
Real
fighting.
Steel.
Yeah,
Yeah, Real Steel.
yeah. My brother loved that movie. Um, yeah, that's actually a really difficult question to answer because it could theoretically work in live action too. Um, I think it works better in animation just because live action CGI has the tendency to fall into a term called uncanny valley, where some of it looks a little wonky and not real. As animation, I don't have to worry about it looking real. I have to worry about what the story is telling. But I mean, if Disney put their top animators on it and made a live action Wally, I'm welcome to it. You don't really have to get that big of a voice cast for Wally, so most of the money could be spent on the CGI theoretically. If they remade Wally, I'd love to see it. I love that movie, and I'd love to see a different artistic interpretation of it. But if I had to choose one, I think it's best that they did animation because, like what I said, when you're watching a CGI movie and in live action, you're kind of worrying about it. Like, does this look real? Does this look like I could reach out and touch it? While as animation, you can go, sky's the limit. You don't have to worry about realism when doing animation.
Do you think that like there would have been a different storyline if Wally had been live action animated?
I would hope not. I can still see everything happening the way it does in live action. Wally sees Eve come down because she's a scout for the human ship to see if there are any inhabitable planets. Or no, wait a minute. I think it was to see if Earth was inhabitable again. That could still work in live action. Him going to space, that could still work in live action. I guess the ship would look a little silly, but after seeing like stuff like Blade Runner and all the floating texts and stuff, I think that could still work. The fat humans would look a little wonky, I think, but with practical effects being used, I think that could theoretically work. I don't see anything that couldn't happen, but if they did have to change something, I could see a live action Wall-E taking place entirely on a deserted Earth. I really could. And then like underground is where the humans are, and Eve didn't come to space, she came from underneath. Like, let's say the humans didn't go up, they went down. Because the surface of the earth was inhabitable and they had to go downwards because that's where supplies of water and where stuff could be grown. And like, let's say they developed technology to harness some of the sun's energy. But I guess I could see it working. I would hope it would work. I don't see anything desperately needed to change, but if it did change, I could see it going both ways.
You said earlier with Into the Spider-Verse, being able to adapt really well to like the dramatic, and like realism and dark themes. But you said that Infinity War and Endgame, Avengers, would not work well in animated. But the Avengers What If series, or I guess just Marvel What If series, was animated. And they did touch on the darker themes as well, and having Bucky and having zombies and Captain Britain. So what about Infinity War and Endgame says that it can't be animated?
I see your point. I guess I just didn't really make my point clear. The reason that I didn't think in that time and Infinity War and Endgame couldn't be animated because of how big of an event it was for accumulating all these actors, actresses, people from all these different movies to come together and make these big two action films. It's a monumental point in like live action movie history. Like nothing of it has ever been done before. Theoretically, and like I couldn't say it couldn't have been animated. I just think it would have hit differently. Like let's say you're building to all this live action stuff happening, and then just right at the end, they decided to do everything animated. I would feel kind of disappointed and cheated after all the 10 years of buildup with all this live action promise of all these actors coming together on one big screen. I guess I'd feel a little bit cheated, not saying that animation is bad, but if they ever decided to like take some of the deleted scenes from Infinity War and Endgame that they didn't use, like, they had like 2 hours of stuff on the cutting room floor, and they decided to add it in using animation, I would be more than joyful to watch it. I guess just seeing that those two movies the first time, it was very surreal for me because I was an MCU fan. Like from day one, I went to go see Iron Man in 2008 with my dad and my brother in theaters. I was there, and I think I would have been a little bit disappointed just seeing that they decided to go with the animated and decided to not do the ambitious part, because anything can
Well,
theoretically be done in
what if
animation.
all of the MCU had been animated?
Then that's totally fine. I think the entire thing of the MCU would also have been a huge thing to do. I mean, like they could have had all different art styles. I think the MCU animated could be a really cool thing, and I think that's what's happening now with What If, and with Spider-Verse actually. Spider-Verse is kind of like Sony's Avengers but animated. It's still really great to see, and so seeing if the Marvel films were animated from day one, I'd be more than happy. I'd still be a fan to this day.
Okay. Moving into, I touched on earlier, like the Disney trend of turning old animated into live action. What do you think is bringing about this need for live action instead of the animated?
I could be the shallow person and say that Disney's running out of ideas and rehashing ideas. But I'm not going to, because I'm a nice person. I can say it's just they want to reintroduce some younger audiences who don't want to watch the animated ones because it may look a little bit dated to some people, and younger kids don't have the respect for the effort that went into the animation at that point, and would rather watch something live action, more attuned to what's being shown in theaters now. I would say it's kind of a hard question to ask because I don't really have any young people around me at this point in time to ask. I could say that Disney also just wants to bring back some of their animated properties into live action for just to kind of say, hey, remember this, and gain a few bucks from it. I mean, I'm not against it. I love seeing different interpretations of the same media. I like the Lion King remake. I love the Jungle Book remake just because it does fun things with the voice cast and the visuals are really appealing to me. And like I was never against any of the live action stuff. I mean, hey, I love the Winnie the Pooh Christopher Robin live action movie. I think that's a fantastic movie, and it's up there with the animated movies. But I don't really have an answer for what's bringing about them. I would stick to my answer in saying that kids just don't want to watch the older animated movies because it doesn't draw their attention like big live action movies do. Guess that would be my answer.
I'm going to fully disagree with that. I do have small children. Well, if the oldest one heard me call her a small child, she would get mad at me. Because she's 8. But it's not so much the lack of appreciation for animation versus live action. It is more the music and like how much interaction. Because if you pay attention to the newer live action animated movies, so like going back to The Princess and the Frog or Moana, or even Encanto, you've got a lot of songs and things that the kids can do with it. Whereas the older ones, like my mom tried showing my oldest niece, I think it was either Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty, and there really wasn't as much music and things to actually capture a kid's attention that way as much as just storytelling, which kids can only sit for storytelling for so long. And
Mhm.
even then the story has to keep their attention. And if they're not invested right away, then they're not going to stay invested or anything. So I don't think that it has anything to do with kids preferring um, live action over animated. I think it's more that Disney now gets a chance, now that they know more composers and people who like songwriters, that they can create these new songs for this old stuff, but then also show off new people. So like Haley, is it Haley Berry or
Haley Bailey, I think.
Bailey? Okay. I always like mix her name up with Halle Berry. Loki. But the I think there are going to be a few more songs, or at least one more song, because like the new Aladdin movie, the live action for that, Jasmine has a new song entirely that was made for the movie. So I think it's more about like creating it more to be kid friendly than the older versions.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that point of view up because I don't have that point of view. It kind of worked the opposite for me. So when my mom was showing me and my brother like the old Disney cartoons, I was all up in arms because it wasn't the music that threw me off, because thanks to my dad and my mom, I have a deep appreciation for music. So it wasn't the music, it was just like the old animation. I didn't have respect for it. And God, that's one of my big regrets in life, actually, was not sitting down with my mom and going off to go play with Star Wars toys. And I wish I would have listened to her and like sat down and really watched those films and analyzed them, because she was really trying to show me something to appreciate. And I didn't appreciate until later in life, until like, it's not even until like maybe 17 or 18 years old, when I was first going for a graphic design degree, that I really appreciate animation. And I kind of looked back at my childhood and I was like, wow, I was kind of a little shit back then. I didn't know what I was looking at, and I wasn't looking at history. And animation as a whole is so beautiful, in my opinion. And I look back at like the old Cinderella transformation scenes, bippity boppity boo, and she has her old ragged dress turned into the big ball gown, and the whole scene with Ursula coming out of the ocean with the trident, the Little Mermaid. Now looking back, that's one of my favorite films of all time, Little Mermaid. Love it. Princess and the Frog, the whole witch doctor scene where he's singing to the prince. Geez, just such beautiful animation coordinated with music. And I regret not appreciating that as a little kid.
So even shifting on from that, so we have a lot of adults that'll go back, and I mean, part of it is because they're like, I'm a Disney adult. Not to like say that that's a terrible thing, but also we all know those some Disney adults that you like, okay. But adults still, I don't, at least this isn't for me. I don't think there's like the appreciation that like you're talking about for the animation so much as the story that's being told through the animation or through the live action. And so I kind of wanted to like, we've kind of talked about different things of like whether or not it would be good as live action or not good as animation. So I just kind of want to like talk about some of our favorite animated and live action ones, and like why we think that that was the best format for them. So what is one, either animated or live action, that you think was the best for that format?
Ooh. Geez. Well, if we're going off of live action, I actually really like the Lion King remake. I love what it tried to do. I don't think it goes 100%. It doesn't pull off the character's emotions when it needs to 100% of the time, but I get what uh Jon Favreau was trying to do with the movie. And I love most of the music. I still don't love Scar's Be Prepared song that he does. in that movie. But I love their version of Hakuna Matata, and I just can't wait to be king. I think just seeing Zazu played by John Oliver sing with tiny little Simba and Nala in live action, it was something for me. I got a lot of enjoyment out of it.
So are you considering that an animation or live action?
It's kind of uncanny for both, because it's technically, they label it as, do they label it as live action or animation? Because
I
I
think
know
they
it's,
technically labeled it as like live action animation
yeah, because it's
because
like
they did
10
animate everything, but it
yeah,
looks real.
right. So I guess you could figure it out. It's both, um, from a certain point of view. For animation, definitely, I love Zootopia, like you have in the background. I totally forgot about that movie until you put that background on, and I'm just like, oh, yeah, Zootopia Plus just came out today. I need to watch that too. I love that movie. Went to go see it in theaters with my parents and my brother. Such a great movie. Um, let's see here. I love WALL-E. WALL-E's one of my favorite animated films of all time, and Finding Nemo, definitely. Finding Nemo was a special movie for me and my dad, for just like connecting with each other, with the father-son bonding, just trying to find each other. And I love Dory, I love Marlin, I love Nemo. Shark bait, hoo-ah. Love that scene. The whole volcano scene with the ring of fire and the what's the little shrimp called? And he's like singing opera the entire time when Finding Nemo needs to go through the volcano. Oh my gosh, so funny. What about you?
So I was actually thinking of Hocus Pocus.
Hmm.
So I started thinking about that one if it had been a animated one. But then I started thinking that that would be more of like a Scooby-Doo esque, like it would feel more like the old Scooby-Doo cartoons and everything. And I don't think it would have had the same fear factor if it had been, like,
Hmm.
not to say the Scooby-Doo isn't scary or anything, because it definitely had its episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if Hocus Pocus had been an animated film instead of a live action like it is, that like kids would just, it would be funnier than it is. Which, I mean, it already has the funny aspects because all Bette Midler, yeah, no, yes, hold on.
I think you're right. I think it's Bette Midler.
Um, yeah, Bette Midler, Kathy Najimy, and Sarah Jessica Parker, like they all have like this really great chemistry that creates the comedy of the Sanderson sisters.
Mhm.
But then you also have like the seriousness of the kid going, oh crap, this is real, and I was just doing this as a joke. And then them trying to get the adults to help, and the adults can't do anything.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that would have been lost if it had been animated. Um, like I think it would be interesting to see a Scooby-Doo episode with the Sanderson sisters as
Mhm.
like an animated Scooby-Doo, but not as a full Hocus Pocus movie.
Yeah, I do think it is possible, because if you look at like Disney's The Black Cauldron, where it does like magic and that horror, but it still balances it out with the silly. I don't know if you mix Hocus Pocus with the themes of The Black Cauldron, I think you could get something really, really good right there. Like the Lich King is still really scary nowadays, and the army of the undead coming out of that cauldron, ugh, still freaks me out. But I did have, oh crap, I just lost my thought. um, oh God, what was I gonna say? I know it's already been technically done, but translating Pokemon to live action was really good. And I'm absolutely begging Legendary to make another live action Pokemon film because of how well it worked in live action. Wow, it worked. really well. Detective Pikachu was actually amazing, in my opinion. And they should make, I think that they should make the Mewtwo movie in live action. I'm begging them to, because it's such a well done Pokemon movie. And I think either they want to do that Pokemon movie or Pokemon 2000, like with Entei and the Dream World. I think that would also be very, very good. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Okay, so now that actually you technically didn't specify which one, animated or live action. So now I'm gonna need you to specify one that is either live action or animation, to say one way or another.
Oh, if I had to choose, it's definitely live action. Just because
No, like how you for Lion King, like how you were saying, like Lion King worked
for
really
Lion
well.
King? Oh,
Like,
probably
but
animated.
I need you to come up with a okay. So if you're saying Lion King is animated, then say what is a movie for you that could not be animated and had to
Okay,
be live action
not be animated.
besides Avengers?
Oh, hold on, give me a second. Oh, Ridley Scott's 1979 Alien. That movie would never work in animation. The fact that it uses its live action tones and how they use the camera to portray like dark and very bright areas, but make bright areas super, super scary, like the chest burster scene. That scene is completely lit and it's still scary as crap to this day. Still horrifying. And I don't think they could do that in animation. That's definitely one movie that can never work as animation.
Okay. So for my opposite, because I chose live action, I'm gonna say that The Princess and the Frog is one that I have difficulty seeing as anything other than animated. And it's not to say that there aren't actors that I could see as the prince that I forget his name, or actresses for Tiana. But like it's the part when they get turned into frogs that like
Yeah.
yes, Disney now has their live action Lion King and Jungle Book and Lady and the Tramp, like they are able to create that realistic, but I don't think it would be as cute,
Mhm.
especially when you bring in, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. Um, I can't remember either of their names. The alligator who plays the trumpet, or and I feel awful that I cannot remember his name as a trumpet player myself. Um, or the firefly, lightning bug. That like I'm like I can't like just thinking of lightning bugs in Michigan and how small they are,
Yeah.
then like with the animation they were able to zoom in more and like make him seem bigger. Like I don't think they could really do that with the live action animation,
Yeah.
if they did that for Princess and the Frog. So I think, but then I also sit there and go, if they did kind of like the Mary Poppins, where when they jumped into the sidewalk art, it was
Mhm.
animated, or even in Mary Poppins Returns when they go into the bathtub and everything, like it's animated.
Yeah.
Um, but making it all animated. So kind of pulling like a Wizard of Oz, where when they're in Kansas, it's black and white, and then in Oz, or in Wonderful Land of Oz, um, it's in color. Like they would have to do that full like separation, I think. And I
Mhm.
think if they did it like Zootopia or Moana, um, they could make it work
Yeah.
for that animation. But yeah, I definitely think The Princess and the Frog is one that would be everyone would be very critical of it if they tried to make it a live action.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, especially with all the voodoo scenes that happens, when the prince is being cursed. I have no idea how they would do that in live action. That animated scene specifically.
I think they could CGI it in
I
because
mean,
they've
without
got
making
enough,
it
like,
goofy, you know,
I
and
think
like
they could do it. I
you
think
think
they
they
could
could do
do
it?
that part just fine. It's more when like they're all animals. That's the part.
Mm,
Because if
okay.
you think about different TV shows that involve um witches and magic and vampires and everything, like there's a way that if TV shows can get it right, I think that a movie could get it right on a better budget. You just
Mm,
have to get the right people with the right vision to be like, okay, we're going to translate this into CGI now instead of just animation where we're just drawing everything.
right.
So, is there anything else that you have to add on the topic of animation versus live action?
No, I don't. Do you?
Um, I just think that there is a time and place for certain live action and versus animated. So like I'll be honest, when it comes to animated and like action scenes where they draw blood, that to
Mhm.
me is always like super kooky versus a live action where it can actually look real and you're like, oh yeah, no, I could see how that creates that mark or whatever.
Yeah.
So like I'm not saying that like Into the Spider-Verse or like any of the cartoon versions of like any of the superhero stuff is bad. I just like it doesn't to me it doesn't work as well. Um and even in Zootopia, like the fact that she used the berries to create the blood and everything, like that
Yeah.
was like okay. It's cute and it's creative because it's a kids movie, but like also okay. Um but I think they can do like the fighting sequences well in animation because it is just like you're drawing out a dance, you're choreographing it.
Mhm.
Um, but it's more like the marks and everything. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, like I even get mad at TV shows where I'm like, they just got punched in the face, and you're telling me it's not gonna bruise or be bloody, like, um, but it's difficult to do that and maintain that in a animated anything. So that's my final thoughts is like there's definitely a time and place. But I think it also depends on the person. Like you said, you appreciate the animation. Um, I appreciate the work and artistry that goes into it,
Mhm.
but then I also feel like sometimes they're more focused on just animating than the storytelling, or like they're more focused on one instead of the other and they don't always mesh well.
Mhm.
Um, but So, on Raving Geeks, we like to end our episodes with some recommendations, whether it's movies, TV shows, music, books, anything that is geeky or we think that everybody should be able to enjoy or try to enjoy. So, Carter, what are your recommendations for this week?
For everybody, I'd recommend to go see Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. It is in theaters as of this recording, and I think everybody should go see it. It is the end of Phase 4 before we move into Phase 5 in February with Ant-Man. Everybody watch Zootopia Plus and rewatch Zootopia and watch Zootopia if you haven't seen it. And watch Detective Pikachu. I think everybody who watches that movie is going to come out pleasantly surprised with how much they enjoy it.
My recommendations for everyone, also Zootopia Plus, because I think it's gonna be just as cute as the Olaf like shorts and the
Mhm.
Groot I Am Groot shorts. Because I think they have a really good like way of making shorts and animation. Um, but I am also going to suggest Hidden Figures. I don't
Mm.
remember if I've recommended this before, but um it's Taraji P. Henson and oh gosh, I'm going into
Isn't
this.
Daphne
Taraji P.
decent?
Henson, it's Octavia Spencer, Janelle Monáe, um, the guy who plays Sheldon on Big Bang Theory,
Oh, yeah.
Kevin Costner, If y'all like Top Gun Maverick, which I do recommend as well, but if you like Top Gun Maverick, not Miles Teller, but Glenn Powell is in Hidden Figures as well. He plays John Glenn, which I always laugh because I'm like, did you choose because it's Glenn and that's your name? But yeah, it's about my gosh, I am terrible with names tonight. Sorry. Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson, who are African American women working for NASA to get an astronaut up into space, being John Glenn. And so you see a lot of like what happens because of segregation, and like how people come together because of it, and also like the gender norms and like who can be smart and who's not smart and what you can have access to based on your gender. And yeah, I think it's a really good movie, and it came out in 2016.
Wow.
It is 6 years old.
That's a long
That does not seem like it was that long ago. But yeah, I suggest that movie because it was really fun and really good. And I think all of the actors and actresses did a really good job of like telling the story true to what was happening and in their lives as well as in the world. And I think all of the actors took to heart as well, like the impact of who they were playing and representing in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
All right. So, if you want to reach out to us to recommend a episode topic or a question of the week that you want us to answer, feel free to reach out on Twitter at Raving Geeks, and then you can also follow us on TikTok at Raving Geeks as well. We can reply to comments on that one, just not messages. But yeah, as always, we have been Hope Gooderl, and
Carter Sally.
we hope that you all stay geeky and have a great weeky.
See you guys later.
Yeah.